3, 2, 1. I know we'll get it all by the end.
Okay.
Especially after we become one less person short after this fucking episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of PandemFlick Vodcast. This is the show where a panel of hosts take a deep dive on a number of different films that all center around the theme of viral outbreaks or pandemics. And of course, this entire show is happening during our own global pandemic, the COVID-19 outbreak. So each of your hosts are recording their segment of this show from their COVID-free bunkers. So
I hope so.
Yeah, so do I. But welcome to the show, and you're in for a treat tonight, folks. But before we get into this episode and the film that we're going to be talking about, I do want to introduce our hosts. So I will start with Adam Harum. Adam Harum is an award-winning filmmaker and the host of Done Better, the web series, which you can find on the YouTubes. And Adam loves to talk about how films could have been done better. That's the thrust of the show.
Ominous.
That's what it says here. That's what my notes say. All right. Adam, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Boyd.
Next up, we got Isaac Joslin. He's the man who drinks from giant wine chalices. It's just this. Oh, it's a normal chalice. Okay, it looks so large.
Wait for it.
It's huge. Isaac also is a man of many talents. If it's not recording sound on a film set, he's chunking away at junk guitars in his garage, and he's also the host of the SacCast Movie Pod, where he dives deep into the twisted, gnarled mind that's within his own head, and he talks about the films he likes and the films he doesn't like. And so we're very grateful to have him on the show. Isaac, thank you very much.
Hey.
Great. And finally, we've got Clancy Bundy. Clancy is also a jack of all trades. He is involved in both Done Better and is the co-host of the SacCast Movie Pod. Along with his filmic talents, he is also quite the artist, and he's always doing his scribbles on the social media. You can find him on Instagram, Scribbles with Clancy. Clancy, thank you for joining the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am your other host. Oh, I realized I didn't introduce myself on the last episode.
Oh,
no one will know who I am.
Do it twice now.
Okay.
Yeah, do it for both.
I am Adam Boyd, and I am Adam Boyd, and I am a professor of film at Eastern Washington University, and I'm going to hold your hand as we take this journey together. So, welcome. Actually, we won't be holding hands. You better have some hand sanitizer, and we're going to be 6 feet apart, sucker. Okay. Let's dive right into this episode. For folks who are maybe not familiar with the format of the show, the films that we talk about have all been selected by individual members of the hosting panel. And the whole goal here is for us to discuss the film on its merits as a movie, and then also how it handles the pandemic or viral outbreak theme. And ultimately, each one of your hosts is going to give that film a grade. It will either survive the pandemic, it's good, it's a thumbs up, or it's infected. It's a piece of shit. And that's how it rolls. And tonight's movie for this episode was selected by our own Isaac Joslin. So Isaac, I'm going to let you introduce the film, tell us a little bit about the plot, and tell us a little bit about this movie that we're going to discuss.
All right, this is a 2005 Japanese film by director Shinji Aoyama called Eli Eli Lema Sabachtani, or as IMDb racistly puts it, Eri Eri Rima Sabachtani.
Yeah, it's like a
is
Japanese.
That what that is? Did they mishear it and they put the R's in there?
No. What it is, the Japanese will Romanize their titles with as it is spoken with their accent.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So, since this is a phrase from the Bible that's been translated into a number of different languages, this is it's the same phrase, but that particular title has the the Japanese flair. Is that
At
correct?
any rate, it has a weird title on IMDb because it was never released in the United States of America.
I don't know why that would possibly be.
All right, let me finish introducing it. Okay, so this is a film about a pandemic that has gripped Japan in the distant future of 2015, and it's called Lemming syndrome. People infected with the disease have an unquenchable desire to kill themselves. It's fascinating. Ooh. This is a Japanese film. But the movie follows two noise musicians who are traversing the post-apocalyptic landscape and coming up with sound experiments that we eventually find out could be the answer to curing Lemming syndrome. And eventually they're charged with saving a girl infected with Lemming syndrome with their noise art. So brief aside here, I want to read the opening paragraph from the review that turned me on to this movie.
Okay. All right, he's prepping the defense, guys. You got to be careful with this. We're beyond opening statements, sir.
That caused me to seek out this film. Okay, this is from the now defunct but thankfully archived MidnightEye.com, which was a great review site for a Japanese film that spawned a lot of great books and stuff. One of my favorite reviewers from that site, Tom Mess, who wrote a great book about the films of Takeshi Miike. Anyway, his review starts thusly.
Appeal to authority.
Let's make it plain from the start, since there is no way around it. Shinji Aoyama's latest film will be an endurance test for some. The title alone, Christ's Last Words on the Cross, will indicate that this isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. For those with an adventurous mind and a strong set of eardrums, however, it will prove a one-of-a-kind experience. And I feel that even if you don't have an adventurous mind or a strong set of eardrums, it still proves a one-of-a-kind experience.
I will agree with that. I will agree with that.
So, yeah, the defense rests for now.
Okay.
Do your fucking worst, you Philistines.
All right. Thank you, Isaac. We'll loop back to you.
Degenerate fucking Philistines.
We'll loop back to you and let you have your closing arguments when it's done. But first, we will. We're going to hand it over to one of our other hosts who had not seen the film before. We're going to go to Adam Harum. Adam.
Oh, I get first. Okay.
Tell us what you thought of Eli Eli
Okay.
Eli.
Yeah.
The Jesus movie.
Yeah.
I can't tell if this movie was made for you, Isaac, or you were made by this movie. Because in watching it, it's like, well, first off, I didn't hate this movie. I saw what it was. I saw what it was doing. It obviously did what it set out to do. It's just not a movie for me, like on any level. But because I know you so well as the person you are, I immediately was like, oh, well, God damn it. Of course, this is literally the perfect Isaac like somber, slow building. Let's cut for 2 minutes and just have someone make fucking noise on a guitar string for 2 minutes. And I can see kind of, because I have gone to noise music concerts with you, I'm like, all of those people in the crowd would love this movie too. It's so bizarrely specific as far as picking a target and ignoring the rest of it and saying, here's what I'm gonna go for, here's what I'm gonna say. And so like on that level, I give it credit, but on just like a movie watching experience for me, frustrated, just like this face was probably what I was doing the entire time. I don't know. I am someone that gets really picky about details in movies, and I don't want to be the person that's like CinemaSin shitty where they're like, well, this doesn't make sense, so the whole movie doesn't make sense. But there are at least enough moments in that to kind of frustrate me. I didn't understand the lemming disease at all, because they say you want to kill yourself, and the whole point of part of the aspect of the movie is that this rich bureaucrat brings his daughter to this country club or like house where these two musicians are staying, and they're like, the rumor is that you guys can cure her of her disease through your beautiful noise music because she has it and she's gonna kill herself. And then the entire time they're there, they just let her wander around and like go out in the woods. And they even like, they almost call her like a pussy for not killing herself. Like the detective's like, oh, you didn't jump, huh? Well, I mean, yeah, you know, and so it was like those aspects, and I get it. I'm like, okay, they're trying to say something about the human condition, but the whole time it was doing that, I'm just like, God damn it, why is so it was annoying in a way, but I was surprised at how much I didn't dislike it. I you know, so it was an adventurous watch. Yes, let's call it that. I didn't immediately.
If your brain doesn't process abstraction well, you're going to hate this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I went to that concert with you, if you remember, I got about halfway through, and then I left, and I just stood outside by a tree, and you didn't even have to text, you just knew. You just assumed that is where I had gone.
But the joke's on you, Harum, because the artists there that night, that's what they wanted you to do, because that was the best experience. Hearing the noise through the walls, standing by that tree, was the pinnacle of what they were trying to achieve. So, joke's on you, buddy.
Yeah, well, I did, just to wrap up on my thoughts, I enjoyed the concept of the pandemic a lot. I enjoyed some of the humor within it, as little as it was. I enjoyed the Japanese filmmaking in general is always fascinating because it is a very different culture and a different type of movie making than what I'm used to and what I grew up on. And thanks to Isaac and expanding my knowledge a little bit more, I have more of an appreciation for it. So I enjoy things like the radio announcer that's describing lemming disease and just giving you exposition like pretty badly. And I was like, and then the old lady goes to turn it off, and the two musicians are like, hey, don't turn him off. And the lady's like, he's an idiot. Like, this guy's a moron. He's stupid. And they're like, well, that's why we listen to him. And it would normally be a, like, underwriting of, like, we're pointing it out so we can't be wrong. But because those characters are the way they are, I'm like, it's very centric to who they are and stuff. That kind of, those little things I enjoyed. The concept in general.
That old lampshade is a good trick.
Yeah. But the concept of like an apocalypse and a pandemic that is handled on such a slow, less chaotic, non-energetic way of like, well, all of this shit, people are dying and killing themselves, but we're just going to hang out in this little cottage with these two musicians. I love the concept. The execution is a little bit more than I could handle. There is an interesting scope to the film.
Yeah. Well,
right?
It's different. It's a pandemic movie about a pandemic that's been in process for years. It's not most movies pandemic movies are about the outbreak of the pandemic and the panic when it's initially getting started. And
actually, most movies talk about a pandemic in the opening title crawl, and they take place decades after the pandemic has happened.
Well, it's a mix. It's a mix. It's Depends on where you land.
70-30. Usually that's an excuse to just have a post-apocalyptic movie.
Well, but is post-apocalyptic movie is different than a pandemic film. I think we could argue that the genres are different. So post-apocalyptic would say that, yes, the disaster that invented the new world, the new society that we're viewing, happened in the past. But, you know, there's a lot of pandemic films that are about the genesis.
I guess the question is, would those movies with the opening title crawl be admitted into our pandemic podcast?
It doesn't matter because we've already selected all the films we're reviewing.
So, the pandemic thing was so loosey-goosey that I was expecting the twist at the end or the reveal to be that this doesn't exist. It's more about human condition and almost the excuse to kill yourself. But that wasn't the point either because one of the guys just gets it and kills himself. So as far as like a pandemic movie, I was very like, it seems so loosey-goosey with its rules and structure on what the pandemic was that it's tough. I don't want to give it a thumb. I'm going to do what Isaac did. I'm going to go right in the middle and say, like...
God, you guys are big, floppy babies. Like, God damn. Isaac,
no, you're right. Clancy, you are right. You know what? You're right. Fuck you, Isaac. I'm going down. Fuck this. The rule.
Isaac,
fuck your feelings.
You are getting Trump levels of just benefit of the doubt here.
No. Clancy's right. I shouldn't be loosey-goosey on that. The fucking rules are all over the place. Are you going to kill yourself or not? Are you going to let the lady go wander the woods alone, or is she going to kill herself? Like, no. Thumbs down.
All right. It's infected. Did we just witness, Clancy did some very subtle peer pressure, and
Clancy just
snapped.
Clancy just gave Adam Lemming syndrome.
No, I think
that's how it's transmitted.
Adam had it, and Clancy pushed him off the bridge.
I think the thing is,
Adam permission to be.
It's been a week.
It's been a permission to unload. It's all I did.
On the day,
dam built behind him, and I just.
On the day you would have gotten that reaction. It's been a week, and Clancy saying that suddenly made me go through the movie in my head and how I was feeling. So I'm just gonna go with that
take. Every
that
take
rage
of the camera following them riding away on their bikes.
Okay,
40 seconds.
All right. So while Adam seemed to say there was some loose merit around the edges, ultimately this film is infected for you.
Yes.
Okay. We will move on to Mr. Bundy.
Okay.
Clancy, let loose, buddy.
I don't need to. Adam did it. So.
Okay. Great. We're moving on. No.
I liked the core concept of this movie, and I myself have a movie that has a pandemic that's a little not as typical as you'd see in a normal movie. And so I like the idea of this thing affecting people, and medicine is completely incapable of curing it. You have to turn to alternative, and then odd stuff, weird fringe stuff is what ends up saving it. It's sort of like the same thing in the War of the Worlds, where it turns out the common cold is really the random fucking thing that saves humanity.
Turns out we shouldn't wash our hands.
Yeah, but so noise music being this thing that could subdue this, although again, we don't really know what stops it or feeds it. The guy says, no, it feeds it. And so it expands the problem or the scope of the problem. So I'm not going to shit all over this movie because I know what Isaac likes, and the act of him submitting this movie was inoculation for what to expect. I was confused by parts of it, as far as them being in a post-apocalypse. The opening scene was really effective at making me think I was in sort of a Mad Max environment. There's people living on the beach in hovels, abandoning their homes. But the majority of the movie takes place in what seems to be a perfectly functioning cottage, aside from the fact that no one's visiting it. It was indiscernible from commonplace. So, Isaac saying that this is a pandemic that's been in effect for a long time. Sure, I didn't pay attention to the time of the movie. Did it say this thing has been going on forever? It seems pretty immediate because the guy in the radio is like, "Oh man, a lot of people are dead. That's the whole city of this city, and that's the whole city of this city."
The numbers in the U.S. have gotten pretty crazy lately.
And so I don't know. As an Isaac movie, it can survive. As a pandemic movie, the fact that they have a sperm in your eye that makes you kill yourself if you see something pretty,
Is that what it was?
It looked like a sperm.
The picture thing, because when I looked up the description on IMDb, which is really bad English, they say that the disease is transmitted through pictures. Is that, and they kept bringing pictures up? They don't tell you how it is, but I feel like, is that what it was? They have pictures as a motif constantly.
As far as the pandemic rules that I could discern from the movie, you have a sperm in your eye, and when you see something pretty, it releases a bunch of hormones that make you want to kill yourself. That's why they were covering her face up when she's driving along the countryside, even though from what I can tell, they were just driving around 7-Elevens and
Is that what they were doing?
Yeah, they were covering her face because they didn't want her to look out at the beautiful countryside.
So then when she was looking out at the beautiful ocean, that's why he's like, oh, you saw that beautiful ocean, didn't kill yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the detective guy was an interesting character because he's like kind of ruthless and an asshole, and then he gets his comeuppance by getting the disease himself and shooting himself in the head. I don't know why the lady who was caring for the other two guys, one of which who was definitely had the virus, was immune or not immune. There's just the epidemiology of the virus in this movie was impossible to follow, which is fine. I would much prefer this movie if it didn't have the pretenses of a fucking plot. If this was a movie about two cool noise musicians honing their craft and because the stuff Isaac, I assume, thinks I would hate, the scenes where he's just pounding on that one wire and modulating the sound. Like I said, I was inoculated by knowing Isaac. That didn't affect me. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, see, I watched those scenes. Yeah, I watched those scenes happily going, "Oh, Isaac, you fuck!" Like the whole time. Look what you did to you. I know you like this, you fucking asshole.
But all the weaknesses and
you're eating this up,
the entire time.
All the weaknesses and complaints I have with this movie come from them kind of attaching this underdeveloped plot to it.
Yeah,
like I didn't get the significance of the guy's ex-girlfriend jumping off the patio. Other than the fact it's because he didn't share the bed. He was he's laying on that one. He was laying there. He wasn't letting her slay down, and then she jumped off the thing. Was it because she was infected? It seemed to be like
but
the
he's
world
lighting a cigarette. He was nice to his girlfriend.
Oh, and by the way, tracing the outline of your girlfriend's body with a fucking flip lighter and then
is hot.
It's the 90th thing ever to 90. That's fucking that's in an Everclear video. I want you to never talk to me about that. Don't ever bitch about the 90s again. I don't know. So I'm not going to shit all over this movie because at the end of the day...
Because you tricked me into doing it.
Clancy, learn to take your own shits. Don't make your friends take your shits for you.
My problems I already outlined. It doesn't have a plot that keeps me engaged. If it had been a documentary about noise musicians, I would have enjoyed it.
You cowards and your plots.
So, Clancy...
You're a coward. Your movie's a coward for pretending to have one.
It's not about the plot. Not everything's about the plot.
Then
maybe.
I'll talk about it when it gets to be my turn again.
All right. Clancy... Yep. Clancy, where ultimately do you land? It sounds like you're walking a tightrope here.
I'm gonna do the same thing I did the last Isaac submission. As a pandemic movie, it gets an F. As a movie,
it is infected.
A B. So on the whole, it's like a failing grade.
Okay, all right. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if we average the scores, this thing's infected.
Yep.
Okay, that's 2 infected. All right.
You just didn't hit the delay pedal in time, man. That's what it's all about.
We will move on to moi, and I will say, I don't think I can say I enjoyed watching this film, but here's what I will say. I at this point in my life and my career, I know what tickles my fancy and what doesn't. A slow burn movie or a slow abstract movie has to do a ton of wacky, has to hit a lot of unique things for me to click. I have liked movies that are absolutely abstract or real slow burns. But for the most part, I find that plot-driven movies are what I am attracted to. And I think I watched this movie and I started thinking about the other film that we all sort of collectively tore apart on this series, which was Cabin Fever. And these two films are worlds apart because I can watch this film, Eli Eli, and in no way, shape, or form can I say that this is not art, that there is not a vision behind this film. It clearly is. And I will say that there's some beautiful stuff that I really enjoyed.
That opening tracking shot is ridiculous.
A lot of the cinematography I really liked in this film. The score, even the noise bullshit, which is not my cup of tea at all. I actually, a lot of the kind of noir jazzy shit I loved. And I thought it was a really interesting contrast to the noise elements in this film. So for me, I don't really think there's a flaw to this movie as long as you're willing to accept from the very beginning that this is an abstract piece that is loosely exploring a lot of themes and ideas. You know, if you come into this film looking for a plot, looking for a thread of sense to the Lemming syndrome, you're fucked. You're going to be pissed, which, you know, ultimately I was like, ugh. God, this movie's so Isaac, and then but you know, we all love Isaac, so you know, you take it at face value. So like for me, and I've seen plenty. This was reminiscent of a lot of like French New Wave cinema. If I think about it, like a lot of Godard films. Although I will say, like Godard and a lot of French New Wave was about pushing against. You know, what was considered traditionalist approach to filmmaking. So it was very contrarian, right? And it was very much there to like push against audience expectations, to ruffle feathers. And I don't feel like this film was out to ruffle feathers. I think it was just a very unique kind of slow way of exploring these ideas, which I think is very much congruent with just the idea of like the genre of noise music, of these musicians finding these like unique and odd frequencies, and instead of having an expected structure to music, it is about, you know, the noise. And so to me, like, I can't say I enjoyed watching a guy, you know, run a cello bow across a goddamn rebar wire or whatever the hell that thing was. Yeah, for 2 minutes straight without cutting. That was excruciating. But
not to derail you, but I do have a question for Isaac about noise music. A big part of the plot was them finding new cool things to make into sound.
Yeah, they were sampling stuff, which I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. But then they modulate it so it doesn't even sound like the original source file that they found. So as a sound musician, like, what's the explanation for that? Is there one? It's just chaos.
It depends. The actor who plays, well, I use that term loosely. The character of Asuharo, who was his the main character is Mizui, I guess, played by Tadanobu Asano, who American audiences will know as Hogan from the Thor movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the guy who played his partner is a real life noise musician and not an actor at all, which is very apparent in the one scene where he has to act.
Yeah.
And he gets all mad and leaves the dinner table. You could tell, like, oof, I guess that's the best they could get out of him. But that guy's name is Masaya Nakahara, and he's a legit noise musician from Japan. And if you look up his stuff on YouTube, one of his projects was called Violent Onsen Geisha, which was a solo project, but he's been doing things under different names. But his stuff is a mixture of the insane, staticky, feedbacky noise music and like collages of clips and samples from more popular songs and sound effects and stuff. So, I mean, I guess the answer is there's a mix of both. Some noise music is very gentle and just contingent on sound samples or bizarre invented instruments, and some of it is just nutso, feedbacky,
chaotic
noise.
Yeah,
it's the Jackson Pollock of music. It's just destroying structure and finding a new language to express ideas with sounds.
And that is the approach of abstract. And so, when you think about that, I mean, this film embodies exactly what the subject is, which is the noise music. It is all abstract. So I didn't like the film. I would probably never watch it again as an experience. But there's a lot of Godard films I would probably say I wouldn't, openly watch again. But I
pop that in on a Friday night.
But I'm not going to sit down and watch Weekend. Again, maybe Breathless, but not Weekend. But I will make my film students watch it, because there's merit to it. And there's something about, you can't just say that the Marvel films, this is cinema. No, like, fuck that. No, this is just as much a cinema as anything else. And it's not my cup of tea. So I think for that, like, my grade is going to be very similar. The pandemic theme was super interesting to me, but again, it's folded into an abstract film, so the pandemic itself becomes abstract. Even the film questions what a suicide pandemic would be, because one character says, like, how do you know the difference between someone who's infected and someone who's just suicidal? And the film asks that question, like, is it a pandemic if there's just instead this emotional and psychological movement of wanting to end your life? Is that a pandemic? Which I think the film, again, loosely explores through a bunch of different scenes. So as a film I'd enjoy, this thing's fucking riddled with disease. It is infected. And in its portrayal of a pandemic, I think it's too abstract for me to say that it survives. But as an exploration of art and cinema, I would say, yes, absolutely, it survives. But I think I'm going to side with just my enjoyment and say that, no, this was infected for me. But I can't, it's hard for me to say, oh, this is a bad movie, because
just give it a thumbs down. Just give it a fucking thumbs down.
I give it. It's a thumbs down. That's a no from me, dog. But
the
as
infection
someone
spreads.
But
Adam's
as someone,
giving Adam permission now.
as someone who appreciates the art of cinema, I can't say that this isn't art and this isn't cinema. It's just not my art or my cinema.
It's
so
Isaac's.
I give it exactly. I give it a thumbs down. It's infected, but I'm not going to say this is a shit movie. It's just not my thing. So Isaac, I want to throw it back to you. Let you kind of summarize your thoughts. I think I know where you land, but go ahead and voice your vote and take us home, buddy.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I had a top 10 list of movies, this would be on it for sure. One thing, speaking to your point earlier about French New Wave being a reaction to genre cinema and stuff, the director of this film, Shinji Aoyama, he spent the 90s making direct-to-video, like, Yakuza genre movies. Like, that was that's how he made his living. And someone of his sensibility, of course, got completely sick of that. And around 99, 2000, he made an art film called Eureka about a bus hijacking that ends in a massacre, and 3 of the survivors, the bus driver and 2 like teenage kids, end up like holing up in a house and coming to terms with things. And the movie is 4.5 hours long, and it is shot entirely in widescreen sepia tone.
So I want to pause you right here, because what you're describing is a man venting. And like, I will admit that art can come out of someone venting. Obviously, that's probably the essence.
Clancy, no one goes nuts like a Japanese man, as this movie is evidence of. The entire genre of Japanese noise music is evidence of.
I'm just saying, there's like ladies in Walmart freaking out, venting, and I would say
but they don't make 4-hour art films about it, right? So, and I have a mixed opinion of Aoyama's other work, but this movie in particular hit like a ton of bricks for me. Because I'm a fan of abstract noise music, and I'm a fan of Tadanobu Asano's Japanese art film work. But also, it's. Can you say you've seen another movie like it?
No, and I think that is I think that is. And that gives it something.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of very interesting themes buried within the very bare bones plot, and like now more than ever, you never know who your essential workers are going to be during a pandemic. Are
Might be
they
your
burger
noise
flippers at McDonald's? Are they experimental Japanese noise musicians? You never know.
No,
You never know what
it's not. It's not them. They aren't essential, Isaac. I can answer that question.
Yeah, there's like
And it's
1,000 jobs above that.
Here's a question. How come these two noise musicians, when the extremely rich guy shows up and asks them to, like, hey, I need your help, like, there's word that you could, their immediate response is to act aloof, disinterested, and shitty? Like,
Because they're fucking punk rock.
I mean, that's how I took it. Is they were like, they're like,
too
they-
old for your mission statement.
Yeah, well, and he offers them money, and they're like, money means nothing.
The lives of the two noise musicians in this movie is my dream existing, right?
I get that.
They just
That
hang
makes-
out together with your
They
bros,
bike?
you know?
Yeah.
They ride bikes everywhere, and they just do experimental noise music all day.
The scene where they're
Sure, they probably smash every now and again. Well, I mean,
the scene where he's like preparing his buddy's funeral pyre, and he's like super
Okay.
excited and smiling, like setting up the sound equipment.
that was I almost
Yeah.
I forgot about that. That's actually pretty fucking metal because he
Yeah.
like samples
Yeah.
his buddy burning in a
Yeah.
funeral pyre to mix
Yeah.
later. That's fucking.
So
That's
this
hardcore.
That kind of birds at the center of it for me, because him smiling at his buddy's grave at the end wasn't as impactful because he was smiling at the opportunity to collect the sound of him at that scene. I didn't see.
well,
any-
but he's also smiling because he's honoring his buddy whose whole life was centered around capturing interesting sounds.
That makes sense to me.
It's
That's
like
how
this
his
is
buddy
exactly what he would want.
Yeah, he would
I'm
wanna
saying
go
we never
out.
had the sad scene where we never saw the contrast to that.
sadness.
Oh, eat a dick. The whole movie's a somber, sad scene.
No, dude, that guy's smiling the whole fucking movie. Go back and watch every frame of the movie. That guy is smiling. He's a
but
smiley
he's-
dude. I almost appreciated the anarchic sort of. He's just sort of like blissfully. He's happy no matter what happens. His buddy dying. He just kind of sits down and looks up at him. And the next thing, he's smiling, building the funeral pyre. Like life. He's like water off a duck's back. Like life.
Okay,
just goes
this
off.
is this is also one of the things I love about this movie is that and like a lot of Asian cinema in general, they're very good at mixing. And I know you hate this from our dalliances in Korean cinema. You don't like that mixture and contrast of emotions, and that's what I live for.
I appreciate it. I just don't like it when it's done poorly, and we have a difference of opinion on when is poorly done.
I don't know. I think the
Not
Japanese
to bring the host
have,
back into it, but like, yeah.
I think the Japanese have a profound understanding of irony, and they expect people to pick up on a little bit more than Americans do.
Well,
But
and
I was going to say.
Go ahead, Isaac.
Okay,
This is
and I was
it's your
also gonna
time.
say,
It's your time.
This movie
Your time
is
down
very,
here. Your time.
This movie is also very much about the relationship between a musician and their audience, right? At the end of the day, this guy's music only mattered to one person, and everyone else didn't get it. But to that one person, it saved their life, you know?
It's the same way I felt
And-
about
and to
Sublime's
me,
first album.
The scene in which he cures her
He's
when he
just gonna
sets
let
up
that
his
one go.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get this out, man.
Go.
This is like my AA. So the scene at the end when he cures her in the field with his big amplifiers and his insane noise guitar solo, that I find the music itself profoundly beautiful because it's not. There's some dynamics to it. It's not just complete chaos. It's calm, melodic chaos, calm melodic again. Sure, it takes about 12 minutes to resolve, but that's part of it. To me, noise music is kind of waveform cancellation. It shuts off my brain and tickles the cockles behind my balls. But anyway, and also I loved the. I guess it's interesting to see what I focus on as opposed to what you guys focus on. But the entire arc of the movie to me is kind of summed up in or it kind of parallels everything else that happens in the movie, is when at the beginning, Tadanobu Asano's character finds that little piece of like vacuum tube, and he swings it around and makes noise in the air, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I can use this." And throughout the movie, they take time to show him experimenting with that thing, and he comes up with this new device. And given the fact that his buddy also has the disease, even though they've been doing their standard noise music, it kind of leads you to believe that that was kind of the key to the cure, right? And so he kicks that on at the end, and that's like the key to everything. And it's a beautiful just symbol for that kind of, unexpected.
Were you supposed to read his friend killing himself as like a real suicide, or was that a byproduct of the disease? Or are you just not supposed to know?
Well, I think it was a byproduct.
Because that scene was pretty hard to that was a pretty pivotal scene to not come through on the acting level. You know what I mean?
I took it as a byproduct of the disease because that recontextualized everything you saw before as them trying to find a cure. Mm-hmm. Instead of just dicking around for its own sake.
And it does drive the other character to then finally perform to save the girl.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an argument.
With the weight of 2 sound noise musicians, because
That's
one of
right.
them's gone.
God
which is why
damn
he's
it.
so goddamn tired at the end. It's a lot of work.
He has to lay down that field and take a nap.
Clancy pointed this
out your ass.
Clancy pointed this out, and it cracked me up when the old lady's like, "Oh, it's Wednesday. That's the day I visit what's his name's grave, who died 2 days ago." This is the day I visit him.
The
from when he
Japanese
died.
are very scheduled people.
It's already in her calendar.
Yeah.
If you die, I'm visiting you on Thursdays.
No, not Thursdays. Okay, so I think as a group, the 3 out of the 4 of us rated this on the infected level. Isaac,
But my enthusiasm counterbalances all of you, and this is the best movie of the lot.
But I will say that Isaac, as a lawyer defending his client, did a phenomenal job and has provided quite a bit of contextual evidence for us.
And also, in closing, Your Honor,
reasonable doubt was not met, and you're still going to get the chair.
the jury's still gonna hang this.
hey, you didn't let me finish my, Your Honor. Please let me finish my closing arguments. But okay, at the end of the day, I didn't pick this movie to piss you guys off. I honestly wanted to know what you would think about it, and I know this is the only context in which I would get anyone to watch this for more than 10 minutes.
Isaac, we're open-minded. If you had brought this to us on a Saturday, you didn't need the pretext of a goddamn pandemic podcast.
At any rate, if you guys
I would have
want
watched it.
Nah, I would have.
If you guys want to go back, if the listeners want to go back in the podcast feed of the SacCast Movie Pod on Apple Podcasts, we actually, me and the other Isaac Jensen, did an episode on this years ago, and he liked it. So if you want to hear 2 people talk about this movie who enjoyed it, it probably got deeper into the arty themes contained therein.
Cool. Yeah, check that one out. Anyway,
I'm just gonna cut that whole chunk out for you, boy. Don't worry.
but a unique film. I mean, we can't argue with that, and certainly one that uniquely folds into the pandemic theme that we're discussing. So I think this is definitely one that stands out for better or worse, and is one that was an interesting discussion. So that's that. Eli, finish it for me, Isaac.
Lema Sabachtani.
Thank you. A Japanese film from 2005.
5.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you are able to track down a copy somehow, or you personally track down Isaac Joslin to get a copy, let us know what you think. Comment. And of course, do all the YouTube-y things, like and subscribe and all that. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in or watching. Thank you very much. I also want to thank our host panel for taking time out of their days to watch a guy rig a vacuum hose to a fan. Thanks, guys, for doing that.
Why was the detective wearing nail polish?
Stop asking questions. The show is ending.
I actually have an answer for that.
All right, answer the question.
A lot of the costumes in this movie were sort of exaggerated genre costumes, given the director's history in genre film. It's kind of interesting to see flourishy costumes counterbalanced by very mundane subject matter.
So there you go. That's why he was wearing nail polish. All right, everybody, that wraps up this episode of the PandemFlick Vodcast. Next episode, we're going to be discussing a fun film.
I buy that with the
Oh my God.
Clancy, shut the fuck up.
the rich guy looked like a cartoon version of a Monopoly Man, so I get that. That one worked. All right, you can close it.
Night of the Creeps. Night of the Creeps is the next episode. A real fun film, so definitely tune in. Also, this show is a podcast, so you can find it on iTunes. And if you're not into seeing our faces, that's fine, whatever. But you can just listen to our silly voices instead. So find us on iTunes as well.
Yeah. If you don't want to watch my wine glass slowly drain throughout the episode.
But once again, thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe,
And we'll see you all in hell.
and stay alert. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next PandemFlick Vodcast.